2021 marks the 35th anniversary of the completion of one of Britain's biggest and most significant motorways, the M25, which for those of you watching abroad is the big circular one that goes all the way around London. It also marks 30 years since the completion of what you can see behind us, the Queen Elizabeth II Bridge, which spans from one side of Dartford to the other when the River Thames cuts through it. So by the early 1990s, this hugely significant and useful motorway was finished, ready for the country's sales reps to close as many deals as quickly as possible.
Of course, that really was the era of the user-chooser company car, wasn't it? So you could have had a Mondeo, maybe a Vauxhall Vectra,
E36 3 Series or a Citroën Xantia.
But here we've got a couple of left field choices in the shape of a Toyota Avensis and a Rover 600, both built in Britain, but both with a little spice of Japanese engineering.
So to celebrate those two significant anniversaries for the M25 and the fact that these two rep car project cars of ours are pretty much finished now, we're going to do a complete lap of the M25. And on the way, we're going to tell you what we think of these cars after all this time and give you some interesting M25 trivia. We're dressed for the occasion, Jeff particularly so. And without further ado, let's hit the road.
Before we get started, courtesy of our friends at Teng Tools, you can win this 26-piece combination spanner set worth over £330. And one runner-up wins this 6-piece screwdriver set worth over £50. So click the link in the description to enter before the competition closes on November 30th. Before we pulled out of Dartford, we brimmed our tanks to see which car would be more economical on our M25 lap. With the Avensis and Rover fueled up, we joined the motorway. And immediately hit traffic.
So as I've just been cut off from our camera car there, we've made it not even 100 yards onto the M25 and already we've hit traffic.
Our first tunnel, is a bit of trivia for you, was opened in 1963, the West Tunnel, and the East Tunnel was opened in 1980.
What a sterling scene. Rover 600, Toyota Avensis, two stalwart champions of the company car 90s era, now rolling through the Dartford Tunnel. Although technically, the bit that does the Dartford Bridge and the Dartford Tunnel that we're in now is actually an A road. It's the A282 to be exact. And that means this motorway circle isn't actually a circle. Good fact for you there. And there she is, the mighty Queen Elizabeth II Bridge, 137 metres high that. And it was originally built to carry 135,000 vehicles a day. Now that does sound like a lot, but in 2021, it's taking closer to 250,000 vehicles a day. Which puts into perspective quite how much busier our roads have got. So now we're rolling out onto the M25 then, all 117 miles of it. And here's a fact for you, 117 miles, if you could do 70 miles an hour the whole way, would give you a total time to complete it of around 1 hour and 40 minutes. The reality is that most circles of the M25, if you're doing a whole lap like we are, you're going to be looking at more like 3 hours with traffic.
Now the idea for a London orbital road goes way back to the 1920s in fact, but it wasn't really until the 1960s that plans started to take off with the idea of 4 ringways around London, getting progressively bigger as they went out. But when the first section opened at Potter's Bar in 1975, the idea for ringways had been dropped and it was to become the M25.
But unfortunately, it wasn't without its problems almost immediately. The first breakdown on the M25 was less than 3 hours after Margaret Thatcher declared it open in 1986. And of course, as we get ever more smart sections of motorway added, getting a breakdown is less and less desirable. Thankfully though, we've got a Toyota and we've got a Honda, which means we are in no danger of any breakdowns today.
So we're heading for South Mim services now, the very services where Baddiel and Skinner filmed the reworked version of Three Lions for the 1998 World Cup. Another music-related fact for you about the M25 is that the dance duo Orbital are named after this road because in the early rave scene, the M25 was instrumental for people to be able to get parties. Yeah. Don't have any orbital on my excellent Sony combined CD and tape deck head unit, sadly.
As we pushed on and the clouds rolled in, we considered the cars that we were doing this journey in.
When Phil said that he was buying a Rover 600 to add to our fleet, I'll admit I was interested. I loved the 200 R8 that we had on fleet a while back, and ever since then I've been campaigning for us to get another Rover on the fleet. And the 600 seemed like the ideal way to do it. And the example that Phil ended up buying turned out to be a prime project car candidate. Not only did it have interest value on its side for being a really late example on a V-plate, but it was a nice spec. You had a good base there, but with lots of scruffy edges on it that, in theory at least, could be turned around relatively easily. So when I got the keys to the 600 for our 90s Rep Cars challenge, I was keen to get stuck in. I could sense there was a good car under all these tatty edges. It just needed some simple, and I hoped relatively cheap improvements. And as it turns out, I was right. A new taillight and a new side repeater were just 20 quid for the both of them. A pair of new mirrors was 25 quid. And then there are the fixes on this car that haven't cost anything. A broken driver's window is impractical and actually dangerous in some circumstances. I did actually buy a replacement regulator to repair it, but it turned out I was sent a passenger's one by mistake which wouldn't have worked. So I worked with what we had. I wire brushed back all the rust, cleaned off all the old grease and dirt that was on it, greased up all the joints and the sliders, and would you believe it? It worked. You might remember the wiper arms were a bit scabby, so I spent an afternoon, took them off, sanded them back, fresh coat of black paint, and again nicely smartened this car up. And this 600 is a great lesson in that. The 600 might not be the most interesting car that Rover ever made, and to be honest, for my money, I do still prefer the 200 R8. But right now, these cars are a proper forgotten gem. You can get into a tatty one for less than 500 quid, and as I've proved, they're a fun, cheap and easy way into a modern classic project car. They're fantastically comfortable, they're surprisingly economical as it turns out, and they're really spacious and practical. They might be the unloved Rover right now, but get them while they're cheap, people. One day these will be a classic.
Me loving the Rover was probably a given, but what about senior sales rep Jeff in the Avensis?
I really wasn't keen on this car when Paul first unveiled it down at the Kent office. How was I going to bond with a Toyota Avensis? I mean, a classic car? Come on. But I have now covered probably 1,500 miles in this thing, and it's just not put a foot wrong. It's just a nice, relaxing place to be. An automatic, so you can just sit in traffic, car doesn't get hot. It's had a little bit of neglect in the past couple of years, and just by doing the simplest of jobs, we've been able to help that. The bumpers were tatty, so we filled up a hole, we recoated them with some black bumper paint. It's made a heck of a difference. One of the headlights had a hole in it. Bought another one from eBay for 35 quid and bolted it in. Again, a major difference for very little outlay. But the massive thing that's transformed this car is a decent pair of front tyres. It had some old, cheap budget ones on the front, and they've basically gone horribly out of shape. The car was just pulling violently to one side. I thought it was alignment, had the alignment checked. Underneath the car is pretty good. Now the Avensis might be some way from being a traditional classic, but there's a lot to like about it. The comfortable, relaxing drive, the massive practicality and unimpeachable reliability make it a great all-rounder, and I've surprised myself with just how much I enjoy driving it. Eek! Am I becoming an Avensis enthusiast? Is this how obscure owners clubs start? Maybe there is an Avensis owners club. Perhaps I should look it up. It's not the most exciting car out there, but despite our shaky start together, I've grown rather fond of the Avensis over the past few months. Wow, that's quite a turnaround.
On that cheerful note, we pushed on to complete our M25 lap, and then it was back to the petrol station. After driving the full M25 and a few extra miles for tracking shots, who'd won?
So here we are, back in Dartford where we started, and now anyone with any sanity would question why on earth you'd want to drive a whole lap around the M25, but actually in these two, it's not been too bad, has it?
Nice and relaxing, automatic, leather. I've had air conditioning that's worked. It's been a nice relaxing trip, and as we've said, it's proof that these modern classic rep cars of the 90s, if you want something that's a nice daily driver but that's a little bit different to a modern SUV, get one of these. They are great bang for buck right now.
Well, bang for buck has been proven, hasn't it, today? We've driven all the way around the M25 with a couple of little extras, so about 125 miles all in. This car has recorded 44 44.5 miles to the gallon. Now my dad had a diesel Avensis. When it was new, it didn't do as well as that.
That's deeply impressive. I can't take that away from him. 2 litre automatic, 44.5 to the gallon. To be fair, I got 39.5 to the gallon out of a 2.3 litre car that's bigger and heavier. I think both these cars, though, have been deeply impressive with the fuel economy.
44.5 miles to the gallon.
You're raving about it. You think you've come round to the Avensis then?
To be honest, it had won me over beforehand, but now, you know, it's just answered all the questions, hasn't it? Okay, yeah, it's not the most charismatic of cars, but can't argue with the facts and figures, can you? Just a little bit goes a long way with a car like this.
It really does. And there's not, the total spend on both these cars is what? A couple of £100, maybe,
Yeah.
if that?
If that.
We were sort of arguing before we turned the camera on who was the winner here, but to be honest, there are no losers. I think they've both done well.
They have indeed, and does that mean I can get changed now?
It does.
Hey!
See you next time.
Cheers.